World Heritage Sites. We call our center as WIPIC. Thank you very much for inviting me to this Value Over International Conference. And I'm especially grateful to Professor A.J. Menon and Professor Navin Piplani for inviting me. I'm truly sorry that I cannot be there with you in person and must greet you through this recorded presentation. Today, I would like to share an international perspective on how we might approach the complex challenges involved in conserving Buddhist heritage across regions such as Korea and India. As many of you know, temples are not simply historical remains. They are living heritage, places that continue to function for their original religious purpose. Because of this, they present very different issues from museum objects or architectural buildings where no one lives and historical monuments or memorial sites that no longer serve their original functions. For living heritage, conservation becomes much more complex than simply preserving the material evidence of the past. My presentation has three different parts. First, I will introduce how the concept of heritage is understood in the international field today and what key principles guide our heritage management at present. These global discussions offer important insights for Buddhist heritage. Second, I will highlight two major challenges commonly faced in the conservation of Buddhist temples using Korean examples. Finally, I will discuss some philosophical framework to guide our decision-making, which has been developed by UNESCO and international organizations, and my aim is to explore how these can be applied to Buddhist heritage. To begin, I will outline recent changes in the global approaches toward heritage, conservation and present conservation heritage management. These international trends are highly relevant to Buddhist heritage and offer helpful perspectives for managing it effectively. Recent changes can be summarized into three different groups. The first is the conceptual change in defining heritage. In her influential 2006 book called Uses of Heritage, Professor Laura Jane Smith of the Australian National University introduced a groundbreaking perspective, which is the heritage is not a thing, but a social process. The second group is the principles that underpin contemporary conservation practices. Today, we take value-based decision-making, integrated approaches, managing change, and people-centered approach in heritage management. The third one relates to the purpose of the heritage management. Ultimately, heritage conservation contributes to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Let us look briefly at how the concept of heritage has evolved. Heritage was initially understood as material evidence of historical events or notable person. By the 1950s, it came to be seen as tangible and intangible assets passed from one generation into the next generation. At this stage, we started to understand heritage as an inherited asset. Since the 1980s, heritage has also been regarded as a resource that enriches our lives. Laura Jane Smith challenges these traditional views by defining heritage not as an object but as a cultural process. Traditionally, experts defined values and delivered it to the public. while intangible aspects were largely overlooked. Smith calls this past approach as the authorized heritage discourse. She argues that heritage values are formed through people's intellectual, sensory, and emotional engagement, and that heritage is deeply connected with memory, experience, and identity. In this understanding, every community becomes a stakeholder and an active decision maker. When people encounter heritage, they engage intellectually with its information and narrative of the heritage, and they experience it sensorially and emotionally. Through this process, individuals and communities construct meanings, develop connections, and reflect upon the values of the heritage. Eventually, they form personal and collective memories which also shape social and cultural identity. Thus, heritage is not a fixed object, but an active process that stimulates and engages our intellectual and emotional capacities. The key principle of contemporary conservation is value-based rational decision-making.